Greetings, everybody, and welcome back to another installment of the Hillen Brothers podcast. I'm your co-host, Brandon Jones, and I'm with the legendary Sam Simmons. What's going on, Sam?
Not a lot, man. I'm kind of boring that way. Um, I think, for me, the biggest change is I did my first live presentation in a while.
Okay.
I think it went okay. You know, I maybe shouldn't have been, but I was surprised by some of the anxiety I felt about doing it.
Mm.
You know, um, um, primarily white audience as usual because we live in Minnesota. You know, uh, outside. Was down in Rochester.
Mm-hmm.
For a bunch of, I think they were educators and social workers. What was interesting is all of their speakers were black males,
Mm.
right? And so I found that interesting that's
What was
who
the
they brought
topic?
in.
Where were they? What was the overall topic of the conversation?
Well, diversity. Uh, uh, there was one brother there who was a diversity specialist. Really kind of broke down definitions and stuff like that. You know, very academically. You know, and then you had another brother there. He was doing some of the same stuff, but differently. You know, how ways to get along, and they brought anytime you go places, the question is about a critical race theory and what do you think about that, and you know
Yeah.
uh maybe the only reason I probably didn't get the question is there was a lot of technical difficulties because the for some reason the presentation would flash in and out, and that kind of thing. So it
Mm.
kind of threw me off. So um but it's always interesting. You get a black face in the room as a speaker, and they want to ask you the question around critical race theory, and see, and I got an answer for them, and nobody's asked me yet. So uh,
we'll
uh,
get into it. We'll get into it today.
yeah, so they might make a slight mistake messing with me, you know, you know. But I took a I you know I had a couple choices. I had put together two different presentations, because my presentations up until that point were all pretty much Zoom. They were all Zoom, right? And
Right.
so uh one so I had two different versions. The more straight to the slides, uh historical trauma, because that's what they brought me in. I was the last speaker of the day, um kind of piece, similar to what I do on Zoom. Then I had another version that I do uh that includes my family history right
Mm-hmm.
along with historical trauma. Where did my family fit in that history? Starting with the issue around chattel slavery, because my both sides of my family is from South Carolina.
Right.
So that history is real
Right.
on both sides of the family, right? And then how trauma showed up in the family down to my brothers. Um, it had the potential of going well, but with all those glitches and stuff in there, it kind of got a little funky from my
Right.
standpoint, but because I'm a perfectionist, you know, and the thing was interesting. they didn't have no questions at the end. They just it was like
mic drop.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was because I plugged in the family, right? And and I've added a piece in my presentation about the Kerner commission report about riots and that Johnson commission,
Right.
why they happened, how do we keep them from happening? And what's interesting about those commissions that Johnson did, you have the Moynihan was done under Johnson, and then you have the Kerner commission done under Johnson. And what was interesting, the reason I think you don't hear as much about them is because they had an assumption before they did the report. Something we accuse people of doing when they do research in our community, right? They do the research to try to validate their assumptions about us. And in both reports, they didn't get the answers they were looking for. And so they didn't get the answers they were looking for, especially the Kerner report or commission report. They definitely didn't get the answers they were looking for in there. And because they didn't get the answers they was looking for, they tried to act like it didn't even happen. Or, with the Moynihan report, they tried to put their own little twist on it anyway, so that has been interesting, the response to that. So I got another live presentation I'm supposed to do on Tuesday in Southern Minnesota again at a university. I've been getting emails from different universities from around the state. They're all doing their stuff. And for some reason, people have been telling them to call me. I think they want to punish people or something. I don't know, but that's a long-winded answer. Said, yeah, that's the biggest change in my life, and the fact that I felt some anxiety around that. But that's it. What about you?
Yeah, similar. More people are interested. It's interesting now that I'm in my new role and the types of phone calls and things that I get, and how people really want to talk about the equity work now in the context of children's mental health. And right now children are getting ready to go back to school if they haven't already started. So a lot of people are concerned. What is this going to look like moving forward? So I've been tasked with a few panels and presentations to discuss that for folks. And what does that look like? But the conversation to me is different depending on the community you're talking about. And when it comes to Black children, I feel like a lot of the conversation's similar. Like the pandemic didn't happen at all. It's like we are still addressing similar things. But now we're also having an extended conversation about making sure that families have resources and stability so that the kids have an opportunity to be mentally and emotionally stable and achieve educationally as well. So, that's what's been happening for the most part. The conversation for today, I think, ties really well with the critical race theory. And what I wanted to ask you on the podcast today was where are we headed as a community? You brought up the Moynihan report and the other report, and those reports had some predictions, and unfortunately, a lot of those things came true.
Right.
Some of those things are worse than they actually predicted. And we now have another major incident that has affected everybody. But one thing, COVID-19, the pandemic, not even the racial unrest piece, that's just like a cherry on top compared to what the pandemic has done economically to us as a society. Where do we go as a community moving forward? The pandemic isn't over. We're being targeted to get vaccinated like crazy. Most people still ain't trying to get vaccinated, which is a whole nother thing. We so we got that. So that's health, right? Education. There was a few reports that came out before the pandemic, just how bad or educationally a lot of our youth are doing. We have the economy's in bad shape, so jobs are all over the place. Everybody's hiring. We got the eviction moratorium. There's just so many layers to this cake. What do you see the next 2 to 3 years looking like for the Black community, if we want to say we have a community? Where is our focus? What does healing look like? What do we do? Do we just keep, because we're so resilient? We're so resilient. Do we do anything, or do we just keep doing what we're doing? I don't know. I don't think it's working, man. I'm every day it chips away at my not my passion, but my ability to think that we're gonna get out of this hole. It's starting to look deeper and deeper for me, and I'm trying to figure out ways to be a support, a voice, a leader, dare I say that, to figure out what do we do. But sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself.
Man, I don't even know. If you ask that question, you're trying to make my head hurt. Yeah.
I don't want your head to hurt.
Yeah, but I'm having the same experience as well, right? You talk about the economics and that kind of stuff. There's a lot of folks doing well. Okay.
Yes.
So you gotta, it depends on who you are. It depends on how you look at our economy right now, right?
Sure.
And so parts of our economy is doing well. The joblessness in terms of numbers have gone down. Everybody's hiring. Matter of fact, there's a lot of cannibalism going on in the employment area, right? I've been working at places that they'll hire staff, and the staff lasts about 3 months, and they're already being picked off by other folks, right? I got one organization I deal with; they lost 2 staff within 2 weeks, just overnight, right?
Yeah.
That's hard to sustain when you're trying, especially in the programs I work in that are working directly with people and dealing with our community, and you can't sustain staff, because, if you're a community organization, you're not as able to pay, right? And so, the bigger organizations, the state or bigger white organizations are picking off staff by the truckload. I mean, It's just been wild. So we have, one of the things, the Kerner Commission report talked about 2 Americas, one black, one white, right? And it became even more obvious, or one white and one dark, because depending on as a person of color where you fall on that routine, right?
Sure.
And it's like it just boom, it's like, okay, you want to ignore this stuff, but it's like it's real clear now.
Right.
But at the same time, once the doors opened or cracked after COVID, all of those folks who were down for the brothers and down for the sisters, all of a sudden don't seem as down as they was before. The door is open and we can, it's like, let's move on, kind of deal. Right. And I don't know. I mean, when you talk about our community and specifically, is parts of our community has, we've talked about this, where have lived their lives in what I call survival stress management mode, right? In the moment, whatever works in the moment, without no thought of the future, no thought of not even the future, the thought of next month, right? Because we're in the middle of that, the thought of next month, right? We got the the crisis around housing that's, you know, as we speak, you know, the moratorium on, you know, these on housing and you know who could be put out has been on and popping, and you know, and supposedly there were programs to help folks, right? And some folks who could have took advantage of it didn't, because it didn't make it, because they couldn't think past the moment, right? It's like and in our community, we have this history of not wanting to talk about certain realities in our community and want to keep them in house, right? We're past that. We you know, worrying about what the system and white folks think. We have to deal with some of them certain realities, right? And this is not everybody, but it's enough people that it should be concerning. You know, I you know, I did a radio show on that, on that crisis. Had a young man come in who was very knowledgeable, and even he talked about, you know, the forms that need to be filled out, and how, you know, landlords. I asked them about not just the, you know, the tenants. I asked them about the landlords, because, you know, a lot of landlords, you know, have 2 or 3 properties, and or, you know, because they're, you know, I got family members that got own, you know, 2 or 3 properties and that kind of stuff, who ain't getting their rent, but they still got to pay their mortgages and stuff, you know. So we're catching it on both ends. It's not just, you know, the landlords are not just white folks, right? You know, and, you know, granted, in parts of our community, there's some white folks who own a lot of property in black neighborhoods, but even some of them gave up some of them properties after the uprising. It's like, oh, I don't even want to be bothered with this no more, right? And some of my friends have bought some of them properties, right? And they talk about, man, I will fill out the form. All I need is a signature.
Yeah.
And they won't open the door.
Yeah.
Right. You know, that whole, we'll deal with it when we have to deal with it. And I know that's been a survival method, because I grew up with that survival method, right? Back in the day, right? The thing that the bill, or the thing that it was the most immediate, had the most immediate danger, like the bill that says, we're going to shut you off in 2 days. You paid that, you know, and might have put the other ones on hold. Right. And I've been in relationships with women who, you know, had jobs and all that kind of stuff. They still paid their bills that way, right? They didn't pay them until they were due, but you had the money.
Yeah.
Right. And then we would have these arguments, you know, because I paid it. If I got the money, I'm gonna pay it. Right. You know, I might pay it within the grace period, but it's gonna be paid, you know, because I don't want to wait. That's an unnecessary anxiety to me if you got the money.
Right.
Right. But you grow up with certain kind of behaviors and certain kind of ways, and, you know, them survival ways. And if you don't become conscious about those ways, you'd be surprised at how much you don't give them up. Right. And so I don't see enough of proactivity in our community around these issues. Right. We'll complain about the issues and we'll talk about the issues, you know, but proactivity on the front side is difficult for some of us. It's like when I'm dealing with my men, you know, and we talking about this, and they want to spend my hour or whatever I'm with them, which I don't let them, to talk about the system and white folks. It's like, whoa. We don't need to have that conversation. That's an old conversation, and that parts of that conversation ain't going nowhere. What can you do? And they'll literally say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And over time, it's painful.
Right.
It's just painful. You know, it's like as leadership, how do we educate our people on the things they can do, but so much effort is on what we can't do, right? But we want to call ourselves resilient, right? And maybe one day we need to even just have a conversation of breaking down this whole concept around resiliency, right? Because I'm getting ready to add it to my men's group. Let's talk about resiliency, right? What's really, how does positive, healthy resiliency, and some people, what you mean positive, healthy resiliency? Resiliency is resiliency. No, if you ask the right questions, when because some folks done heard words and then had them words thrown at them generationally. Why are you being so negative? We're resilient people. No, we can make anything out of anything, and that is true, right? But two things can be true at the same time. And as we often base a lot of our stuff around trauma response, is one of the biggest trauma responses is not being able to realize two things can be true at the same time. It's either got to be all or nothing, right? And so you ask young people, they'll throw you saying we're resilient people. I don't know why we're talking about trauma. And it's like, tell me what resiliency means. And one little Negro, he was so proud because, I often talk about my guys like to try to make me look bad. They want to make me, or they want to be smarter than me. Right. And dude got to smiling and said, resiliency is we're still here. What do you mean? No, man, they ain't killed us off. We're still here. We're like roaches. We ain't going nowhere. So, but again, we're talking about individuals who live their lives in the moment, right? And living your life in the moment means a lot of times you'll do stuff in the moment, probably just to feel good, that will cause you more anxiety down the line.
Right.
Your priorities end up being in the wrong place. And people don't like you talking about that. I don't get mad about it because I understand it. If you don't know something else, it's hard to do something else.
Right.
And so you asked about, I'm concerned because there's a lot of uncomfortable kind of stuff going on. I mean, just recently here on the black side of town, because I know it's not just folks locally listening, they had a you know how you got the caution warning, it's like, you got the red alert, the caution alert, and all. They had a red alert on that side of town from gun violence.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Woo, shows how disconnected I've been over the last.
Oh my God!
Wait a minute!
I thought they were joking, right?
They had a public service alert around gun violence.
Right.
Damn.
A gang member or somebody got shot, and either Thursday or Friday, and they put an alert on because they thought it was going to be some retaliation and canceled programming over the weekend.
Wow. This was this past couple days ago.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's something that happens in school buildings, right? You have a shooter or a shooting or incident in the community, they'll shut their school down. They shut the community down.
Well, parts of it,
Well, attempting to, yeah. Oh, wow.
And so they contacted all of the, because there's a group of organizations that are getting safety money.
Yeah.
Right. And they had a meeting amongst them, you know, and then all of a sudden you seen the green shirts on the street, the orange shirts on the street. I mean, because we've been trying to have 21 days of peace for over 60 days, but that's a whole nother issue. Okay. And I was stunned. Because because I was over in that, because I do my radio show in the north side or whatever. And they were literally talking about it on the radio, and it's like, whoa. And you looked out the window and you seen all of the little shirts and stuff gathering and stuff like that. They took that shit. That was serious.
Man, wow. I missed that memo, man.
Yeah, but you don't live over there, brother.
I know I don't. I know I don't. For my own trauma related reasons, I don't. It's when you say they have an alert for the community, it reminded me of the movie The Purge. I don't know if you ever seen any of those movies, but when shit hits the fan, there's a horn that goes off on The Purge. And it's like, here we are. I mean, let's just be more specific. I was gonna say Minnesota, but Minneapolis has been, ground zero after George Floyd was murdered for community policing and things of that nature, community policing reform. And I'm out of that loop now. I don't do that work anymore, so to say. But I'm curious to know, is this like part of those efforts is now community is on alert? We're going to put these street teams out here to kind of help curb this violence. That's fascinating. But what message does that send to the community, and how much voice did folks actually have in that? Because I mean, for me, if I did live in that community, I don't know how I would feel about that. Like, should my kids not be outside to play? What if I have to go to the grocery store? Like, that just seems a little alarming, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I don't know, and I might be wrong for this, but I don't know if I can see another black mother on the news talking about enough is enough, and we need to come together, and y'all know who done shot my child, and all these other kind of things. I mean, we're having that almost a couple times a week on the news. And then, I had a meeting with some folks over the weekend that are behind the scenes, and some of the stuff I learned behind the scenes ain't what is being seen. It's like now you got people starting to question, where is the money going that all ended up in the community to do this work?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I seen a piece that was done on Black Lives Matter. Where is all that money going that was supposed to do the work? Right. And so you got some imploding kind of stuff going on in communities. Right. Mm-hmm. And and people knowing, like, you get a parent or one of the children get shot, daddy shows up and find out the daddy knows who was doing the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
And some mamas know who's doing the shooting. Right? And so I don't know. I mean, and when I have this conversation, and I've been having it lately with different people that get this stuff around trauma. Right. And I asked them, what do you think we should do? And they're all don't have.
No one knows. And that's part of where I'm stuck, because it's easy for us to hop on the money conversation and say, where'd all the money go, and point fingers at who used the money and how. But maybe money is not the tool to solve this problem. Like, I think we're at a point in time where we need to be a little bit more honest and start looking at the culture in the community and saying, what do we need to infrastructurally do to shift this culture, because it is getting it has been out of control. When you have, like you said, when you have mothers, losing children. I mean, not just mothers, just people, friends, people losing friends, siblings, all that. And we're seeing this consistently almost weekly at this point. At what point do we say this is not working? We need to look at a different strategy. What is going on with the culture in this particular environment that is producing this? This is crazy. Like, I think money does help to get some things done, but obviously the stuff that we're pumping money for ain't working. I'll never forget when I started working for you for the first time. And we were doing work around domestic violence, and there was this big women's conference here, downtown St. Paul, and me and you were having a conversation, and they were talking about sex trafficking. And I said something to you where you was like, "You better not ever repeat that out loud. I'm not gonna repeat it out loud here." But what we were talking about was if sex trafficking is this multi-billion-dollar world industry, and the efforts to focus on sex trafficking aren't on the demand. It's like, where's the focus on cracking down on the traffickers? And that, to me, I feel like, that's a strat. When something's gotten that bad, you have to look at, well, where's the demand? How do you address the demand for the situation? And I feel like in this case, when we talk about community violence, the demand is on the folks who are doing the damage. Where are the guns coming from? Why are these young men getting to the point where they want to murder one another? It's not just because they don't have jobs. Like, there's a whole cultural thing that we have to focus on. We do it in other areas. In domestic violence, we know that the abuser is somebody that we have to address, right? And support the victims and make sure they have safety. But when it comes to community violence, I just feel like our strategies are kind of backwards or sideways at the very least. It's very fascinating. Yeah, but that's just some of my thoughts. I didn't realize that alert went out. That's like, I mean, to me, that's scary too, because if at this point we're at alert status, what happens when we go to code red or code orange or whatever the next level is?
But the issue is my understanding, the people who called the alert are the folks who are on the ground addressing the problem. Okay,
that's a good step. What happens when that alert? What's the next phase? Is what I want to know. Are we bringing the tanks out? Are we calling the police back in? Like, what are we doing?
Well, the part of the response will be, and has been, this is an example why we need more money.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, that'll be part of the conversation. I mean, and it has been, right? The money you're giving is cool, but we need more bodies on the street and that kind of stuff. And that's all fine and dandy, but and then I hear that one of the organizations who's supposed to be out doing the community outreach on the street, and I didn't see this. They reported it to me. Did you see the video online where you had one of the members of one of these outreach groups beating the hell out of a homeless dude on the street?
Wow.
In the t-shirt.
What is going on? Okay. Wow.
And and then the leader has to get on and says, this is not what we train, and this is not what we do, and this is not, and they got rid of dude instantly, right? But again, that goes back to another piece in terms of the community outreach, that when you were doing more of that, and I kept saying, what are you doing with the folks who is doing the community outreach?
Yeah.
What kind of trauma work are you doing with them? Even the keynote speaker at my conference this year talked about that. The work they're doing, they realized they had to do some trauma work with the folks doing the community outreach, because the people who are willing to do the community outreach, in some cases, was part of the problem.
Yeah.
And then in some cases, some of the cats who are doing the community outreach ain't been out of jail that long. And now they're getting paid, you know, $20, $30 an hour. Now they ain't got no, you know, benefits or none of that kind of stuff. But, you know, if you ain't doing anything with them around their trauma and how they're triggered and that kind of stuff, or playing both sides in the middle, because again, when you're in survival mode, you take advantage of situations.
Right.
In not in a survival method, not in necessarily a growth method. See, there's a way of taking advantage of situations and seeing growth.
Right.
I'm lucky that I had enough sense at the time to do that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Right. I took advantage of some situations in a more positive way and built who this is. Right.
Yeah.
It could have been really could have went a whole another way if I didn't, you know, if I just worked within the moment, you know, with the money I was getting and all the other kind of stuff. But I built on that ideal. And so when things ended, I still could survive, right?
Yeah.
And then even thrive, right? So there is a piece. And then the work that's being done in the community is always after the fact. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, the same thing we accuse police officers of. Right? You know, they're not preventing anything in general, you know, other than their presence might prevent something, right? And so what do we need to do both end? What do we need to be doing on the front side?
Right.
What do we need to be doing on as some people, you know, the old adage, upriver.
Right.
Especially when, again, my experience has been that a lot of my clients, there's a lot of stuff they don't know to function out here in a way that you want them to function.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And if I'm always on survival mode, even when I don't have to be on survival mode, I still will function from a survival mode. I've seen folks who go to universities, get diplomas, come back, have skills, and get caught up in that survival mode, you know, that they never forgot. You know, cutting corners they don't need to cut, right? Not putting in the work as full as they could, or not having patience, right? You know, it's like I have this goal in mind, but not putting in the steps because I don't have the patience. With my group that I do with men, I say 18 to 35, right? And for a long time, most of my guys were in their mid-20s, right? Mid-20s, early 30s. Now I'm getting a younger and younger bunch.
Right.
I mean, I'm getting a lot of 18, 19-year-olds. Right? And we were having a conversation about a topic that's plain old goal setting. Right? We had guys on there who said, man, I don't set goals. I just make it happen. Oh, okay. And do you and I've been successful. Do you think if you'd have set some goals, you could have made it happen earlier? and you know, and they never thought about that, right? Or you got this one young man who's talking about his goal in his senior year of high school was to graduate, right? And he said, you know, they told me that I had 3 credits or 3 classes I had to do. And when he said it, you could see that he was surprised that he only needed 3 credits.
Yeah.
Okay. And so in that moment, he made that goal. Right. And then he started talking about why he didn't make the goal. Because he didn't graduate on time. He said, you know, I've been in school, I've been playing basketball, you know, and then the basketball season ended and I got distracted. Right. And you know, I didn't finish school. I said, okay. So your goal was to play basketball, not to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
I said, if your goal was to graduate, even when you stopped, the basketball season stopped, you still would have worked on that goal.
Right.
Yeah, well, I could have finished anyway if I would have went to summer school, but I didn't. Okay.
So you struck
and then he started, and then, the more I started prying, he said, well, I knew if I graduated from high school, I would qualify to go to college and be on a college team. So I said, again, your goal was to play basketball. It wasn't to graduate. That was just a means, and you still didn't make that. Well, I should have just quit school at 16. I got a friend's mama who didn't finish high school making $80,000 a year. And I said, so what does she do? I don't know. Okay.
What is wrong with us?
Have you talked to her and find out what else she had to do? Because I'm not saying that you can't learn outside of high school, because the work I do is at PhD level, and I ain't got no PhD, but I had to do some other stuff, some other self-education and other stuff to be able to do this work. So, but you ain't had a conversation. All you want to do is talk about she make 80,000, and that was a secondary report from some other kid, right?
Right.
So school, you graduating, if you plan your goal to graduate from high school for to start in 10th grade, at least.
Right.
And so, and then you didn't even have the patience enough to finish. Well, I'm easily distracted. I like to have fun. And I don't know if it helped him walking through that, but I know he never had nobody challenge him in that kind of way, at all.
Right.
And then what make it even better is the other guys start chiming in. Mr. Simmons is right. Your goal was to play basketball.
Right.
And so you need to understand, even if your goal was to play basketball, really, if you made a goal, the really honest goal to play basketball, that might have helped you, motivated you in another way to even finish high school.
Right.
So even that was shady.
Right.
And the thing about that is, I've seen folks, who would say to that young man, well, at least he had a goal. You should give him credit. No, I ain't. I ain't gonna let him off that easy. When you talk about compassion, accountability, I got compassion where he's at, and I know where he's at, because I've seen it. Now I'm gonna explain that to him too, but I'm not gonna validate no craziness.
Right.
And the sad part about it, again, it comes down to he don't know what he don't know, right?
Right. Yep. But even hearing that, I'm like, there's so many dots that were not connected, right? Unfortunately, the young man got himself to a place where graduating high school had to be a goal. When we got kids who graduate high school is not a goal of theirs. High school is a vehicle to get to other goals, and that's the standard, man. And it's like, at some point, we have to make sure that all our children have the opportunity for these honestly, I would say for most students, high school is minor. It's an expectation that you're going to graduate. Every student's not going to have it easy, and there are challenges, and they're going to need some assistance. But the expectation is not a goal. It's just like, this is something we do. It's like going through elementary school, like go through high school, then you figure out what you're going to do as an adult. And 3 credits, man. Where is the support for this young man to just get it done? Like, somebody's just like, come on, man. Like, you just got to finish. He slipped up and told you summer school, right? He could have had those 3 credits done, but he didn't. And then he played basketball. And once basketball season was over, his interest level, he he bumped out. So that second semester of school, he could have finished those 3 credits. He could have finished them in the summertime, and his plan would have been fine, but he didn't. And
Well,
so
the thing
many
is, as I told him, that if your goal was to graduate and that goal was in 10th, 9th, 10th grade, you might have been able to get done sooner.
Yeah. He would have been done. I mean, he even from what you're saying, he would have been done in the summer if he would have just did what he was supposed to do.
but again, I can't be. I wasn't mad at him, and the thing is, he was who he was, right?
Right.
And that's the other piece when I think about this situation. I didn't go to school because I enjoyed school.
Mm-hmm.
The things that when I think about what helped me, because I wasn't good at school.
Right.
Matter of fact, I despised school because the kids I went to school with were mean assholes, right? and a lot of them looked like me. Right. Okay. And so going to school was terrifying for many reasons, right? But I enjoyed drafting class.
Right.
I was part of the choir. I was part of the wood shop, right? And if and because I enjoyed those classes, if I didn't go to the other classes, I wasn't going to be able to do that.
Right.
And that's that's the downside of when they took extracurricular activities out of school and start talking about only testing.
Yeah.
I was part of music, right? Those things kept me in school. Right. And I look on that. I mean, granted, when I did drafting, it made me, I wanted to go to college to be an architect. Now that got downplayed by my father because I lived in a factory town. You know, what was the response? Well, working in a factory ain't good enough for you. What that got to do with me wanting to be an architect?
Right.
You know, and you know, and it didn't help that you had this white man counselor talking about, well, you know, you might be kind of looking past that might be a lofty goal. I mean, look, I'm in 11th grade. How is that a lofty goal? Why don't you just come out and say, well, black folks don't become architects, right? You know, I was a good draftsman. Even if I didn't make it to an architect, you know, a lot of job sites use draftsmen. A lot of parts are drawn up by draftsmen, you know, especially when we're talking about industry.
Right.
You know, I still use those skills when I want to do stuff in my house. I draw up the floor plan and figure out where stuff's going to fit, and you know, and found out that helps a lot. You know, even when I remodeled my kitchen, I drew it up. So luckily I drew it up so I didn't get a refrigerator was too damn big for my little ass kitchen. You know, so you know, so again, this is not. You know, I end up feeling a sadness. I shouldn't, because I don't like to use the word feeling sorry for somebody, but a sadness for the young man. Because I could tell that he ain't no dummy.
Mm.
Now, he might be a little ADD because he seems to be easily distracted, right? Because he was talking about, you know, he had missed a couple groups and, oh man, I was with my friends and I forgot and that kind of stuff. And I said, okay, you can tell me that, but your probation officer ain't trying to hear that shit.
Right.
And you know, and he heard that because he trusted me, right? Even after everything I said, he said, I understand. He says, I've set my alarm clock on my phone so I don't miss. Right. So you can hold people accountable, but if they hear some compassion in there,
right,
they can handle that. They can handle, our young people can handle more than we give them credit for. If you do it with some sincerity, right? But well, you should be glad he showed up. What the hell?
Yeah, the bare minimum is
Right.
bad, man. It's like
No,
the bar is set pretty low for us.
yeah, and then you won't get mad at schools talking about the bar, be accountable and that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's some bias in the accountability. Accountability without no compassion is abuse, as far as I'm concerned. And so, what we got about 8-9 minutes. Anything you want to touch on before we leave up out of here?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of put a bow on it and connect some dots throughout today's podcast, I wanted to just spend the last few minutes just talking about resiliency and the definition that we function from and utilize to empower ourselves is not the definition that we see. When we talked about that earlier, I went and looked and I was like, let me see what's the actual definition of resiliency. So what popped up from Oxford's dictionary, there's two definitions here. It says the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. So the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties or toughness. And then the second definition is the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape, like elasticity. So again, the ability of a substance or object to spring back into shape. And if we're going by these definitions of resiliency, I don't think that fits us. We talk about a capacity to recover quickly from, we've been recovering for a long time, but part of that's because the trauma keeps going on. But I don't think resiliency is the right term for us when we talk about where we are as a community, just based on these two definitions.
Well,
however,
I
have another term. Go ahead. I have
you got to
another term.
understand when the old people was talking about resiliency, right? A lot of times when they was talking about resiliency, it comes from when the white man said I couldn't do it, I did it anyway. Right?
Right.
The white man said I couldn't do it, I did it anyway. The white man said I couldn't build the house, I did it anyway. The white man, said I couldn't fight in the military, and I did it anyway, and I actually did it better than his ass, right? So it was always doing it better, right?
Right.
Which brought us to a whole nother thing I have a little angst with, that we had to do it 3 times better than white folks. I don't even know if that still applies the same way.
John Henryism. Right? Maybe we need to get back to that. We need to start out competing them. Oh man.
Well, I mean, we can see that. What I realize, you can outcompete them and not work as hard as them too.
The bingo.
Yeah, because I
crack the code.
Dude, man, I look at my life, man. I ain't worked hard in a long time.
Facts.
And I've been working in places that are supposed to be difficult, but I ain't worked. I mean, I worked smart.
Yeah, just outsmart, man. Use both sides of your brain. That's what I always say. Use both sides of your brain.
Yeah, it ain't just brawn, right? And that kind of stuff. And I guess my goals were a little different, right? They weren't always tied to certain type of accomplishments, like being the president of the organization and all that other kind of stuff. Because I always knew it would come with being the president or being out front. I never was an out front guy, even though I get dragged out front on a regular basis, because I knew it would come with that, right? So that means a broader thinking about that. But when old people talked about resiliency, right, it was from a standpoint that I'm gonna do it in spite of what you think of me. Right. And not only am I going to do it in spite of what you think of me, I'm going to even do it in a lot of cases better than you do it, which also caused a lot of angst and so for some people to get hung because they a bully don't like being showed up.
Right.
Yeah. And so again, you have that definition, spring back, right?
Mm-hmm.
But spring back to what?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So I'm still here, like the young man said. I'm still here. You've been trying to kill me, but I'm still here. And even when you think about you've been trying to kill me, I'm still here. Who been trying to kill you, brother? And you still here.
I have a better definition that goes right along with what you're saying.
So,
man, at some point, I understand the sentiment that that it is hard and our lives literally can be ended at any given moment, but that we are not being hunted down. We are not experiencing what our grandparents and great grandparents experienced. This is a different time frame in this country. It's still effed up. Don't get it twisted, but it is not at this level where we have an inability to prosper and do what we need to do without compromising ourselves. And I think that's one of our biggest challenges is when we do start assimilating into this American culture, we feel like we have to give up who we are and we have to act like somebody else. And that's just the conditioning piece. When you can just be you and still, live, you will crack that code. You will find out that you don't have to work 2 and 3 times as hard as them. But you do have to be smart. You do have to, use both sides of your brain, as I always say. Use both sides of your brain. But it's hard to do that when you have adapted a mindset that you are less than somebody else due to white supremacy and racism. So with that, I'm going to share one definition with you and I'll let you close us out. So instead of saying that we're resilient, another word that came to mind, and I looked up this definition, is stagnant. I think stagnant fits better. Now, stagnant has 2 definitions, and I'm going to get in trouble for both of these ones. So the first definition for stagnant is having no current or flow and often having an unpleasant smell as a consequence. And this is referred to a body of water. So when we talk about going upriver, it's very fitting. So a body of water or atmosphere of a confined space, having no current or flow, and often having an unpleasant smell as a consequence. If there's any community that fits that racially and ethnically, it has to be Black American community. The second definition is showing no activity, dull and sluggish. And that's what I would say. That's what it looks like for our advancement in healing is like, what is the activity? Where is the shine and how do we keep moving forward collectively? So stagnant may be a new substitute for what we call resiliency.
Okay. On that note,
and I'm going to get in trouble.
Yes. Okay, folks. Well, we plan to be back next week.
Just think about
it. Stay safe. And it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. We'll talk about some healing strategies on some of the next couple of podcasts because we got to move forward. Time is going on. Our community deserves better. Our children deserve better. We'll talk to you again next week. Peace.